The corn is coming in here in Kentucky, and we were blessed with an abundance of corn that was given to us by a friend. Now today I'm going to process it in 3 ways, and I'm going to bring you along. Hey friends, it's Barbara Sue at Kowalski Mountain, and welcome back to the homestead. So we have a very good friend who has been super generous to us and shared his corn harvest with us, and I'm super excited because this corn is so good. Now these ears of corn I'm going to set aside and save it for fresh eating, but all the rest we're going to process together today. So that means the first thing on the agenda is shucking corn. Now this corn is a bicolored corn, which bicolored corn is actually my favorite. I prefer to grow and eat a bicolored corn. I think it's just sweeter. Now this variety is called Remedy, and our friend has been growing this variety for a long time. This is his tried and true Remedy that he likes to use on his farm. Now I am going to make and preserve my corn in 3 ways. Now once I get all this shucked and washed, we're going to move on to the next step. All right, we're gonna get started. My water has come to a boil and my corn is ready. Now the first step is to blanch the corn, so I'm gonna put this in my boiling water. Now the first way that I'm going to preserve corn is by freezing. Now we have canned corn in the past. Several years ago we had a bumper crop of corn and we canned a whole bunch of it. But we don't like canned corn. And so we're not going to do that again. At least not all of it. Now on the homestead, freezer space is a big commodity. And things don't go into the freezer unless they really earned a spot there, and corn has definitely earned the spot in the freezer. Now this is going to blanch for about 3 minutes, and then we're going to plunge it into the ice water to stop the cooking process. So now I'm going to cut the corn off the cob. And that corn is going to go on a tray where I'm going to freeze it, because I don't want a big block of corn. Now there is kind of a fine line when you're cutting the corn off. You want to cut off the corn, but not get too much of the husk, because the husk doesn't taste good either. But you also don't want to waste the corn. Now I have to say that putting up this corn reminds me of when I was a little girl. So I grew up in Central Florida, and Zellwood sweet corn is very well known throughout the state. And our families used to get with some other families, and we would go down to Zellwood and they would get a truckload of corn, like a pickup truck full. And then we would all put up the corn together and they would share it. And I was a kid then, so my job was shucking corn and things like that. I didn't have important jobs like this, cutting the corn off the cobs or anything. But I remember that, and one of my favorite things was we used to have a big jar of hot water, and they would put butter on top, and the butter would melt. You would peel your corn and you'd hold on to the husk, and you'd dip that whole cob right down into that butter. And because of the hot water, you'd dip down through the butter, and then you'd bring it back up, and it would be coated with delicious butter. And that's all I remember eating that day was corn. And it's just one of those memories that makes me think of my childhood that was really special. Now you will notice that I have the corn husks covered up. That's for one, mostly to keep the flies from coming in. The cut corn is being put away pretty quickly, but the cobs are just sitting here, and I don't need any flies or sweat bees because they bite. And the other reason is because one of the things we're going to make is going to use these cobs, so I don't need any bugs on them. Now this happens when not all the kernels develop because not all of the silks got pollinated. Every kernel in your corn has a silk attached to it that's out the top, and every silk has to be pollinated to develop its kernel. And so this happens when all the silks are not pollinated. Now I found very few cobs that have undeveloped kernels on it. So it's more of a fluke with this crop than the rule. Now the corn that I'm going to freeze is all on trays and it's in the freezer doing a quick freeze. And I got about 4 trays of corn that I cut off the cobs. Now the last 15 or 20 years I am going to make creamed corn. Now I told you earlier in the video that we don't like canned corn, and that's true. But I do like creamed corn, and I actually really like to bake with it as well. It makes really nice cornbread. So I am going to do the last bit of it for creamed corn. Now we do it pretty similarly. I've already blanched the corn. I've chilled it. And I'm going to cut off the corn off the cob. Now this corn I'm going to add to a measuring cup because I need to know how much I'm going to have. But I'm going to take one final step. I'm going to take the cob and I'm going to scrape really deeply into the cob to get all that juicy, milky, creamy parts that are left there. And I'm using the back of my knife. And now I have all of this left over. And that's going to become part of my creamed corn. Now we are going to add a little bit of water to it. But mostly my creamed corn is just made up of all that leftover creaminess on the cob. So we're just going to scrape it. And that's going to become part of my creamed corn mixture. Now that the guineas are getting older, I love listening to them. You can hear them all over the farm, of course, and we only have 5. Now it completely blew my mind that creamed corn didn't actually have like any milk or anything in it. It's just made from the corn itself, which is so interesting to me. Now for the last of the cobs, I am going to make corn cob jelly. Now I have been wanting to make this for a very long time and I just haven't had a chance to do it. So I'm excited to try it because this corn is so good. Now, one of the cool things about corn cob jelly is, past generations learned how to use everything and not waste. And our generations and those younger than me waste even more. And making something like jelly out of corn cobs allowed people to have something sweet that maybe they wouldn't have had otherwise. And it also eliminates all the waste of the good nutrients and things that they had. So I'm gonna make it because I want to give it a try, and I eat yogurt almost every day, and I have jelly or jam in my yogurt to sweeten it. So I've heard this is a little bit like apple, but I'm gonna try it for the very first time. Now these are gonna come to a boil and cook for about 25 minutes, and we're gonna make a corn water out of these cobs. So now I am going to can my creamed corn. Now it is a low acid food, so this has to be done in the pressure canner. Now I'm adding some salt for flavor, and I hope you can see me. Now my creamed corn I primarily use for baking. I like to use it in cornbread. And my recipe calls for 1 cup. Now I really wanted to do half-pint jars. That way I could just have 1 jar for a batch. But of course, that didn't work. A half-pint jar holds exactly 1 cup, and that includes all the way to the rim. And I have to leave an inch of headspace. So I'm doing this in pint jars instead. Now the first time I made creamed corn, I wasn't sure about it because I don't actually like store-bought creamed corn, but I like this. Now I think I had about 15 ears of corn, but I took the scrapings from all of the corn, except what I'm reserving for the corn cob jelly. That I left the scrapings on it to flavor the jelly. Well, that was the 6th pint, so it looks like I'm going to get 7. Now for this recipe, I'm using the recipe right out of the USDA canning book. Alright, now this is going to start coming to pressure, and once it does, it's going to process for 85 minutes. Now it is day 2 of corn processing, and no matter where I put the table, the sun is in the wrong spot. So I don't want to move it, we're just going to stay here. Now the creamed corn finished up last night, and this looks really good. Now remember, I'm going to be using this to make cornbread, which I really enjoy that. And I got 7 pints, so I'm super happy with that. Now today, we are going to make the corn cob jelly. Now yesterday, I boiled the corn cobs in water and made a corn cob juice. And I strained it, and I need 4 cups of corn cob juice to make my jelly. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this on the stove and heat it up, and then we're going to add some more ingredients. Now my corn water is heating up, so I'm going to go ahead and add the sugar, and we're going to completely dissolve this and bring it to a boil. Now it definitely smells like corn. Alright, so we've got a full boil. It's a rolling boil. It can't be stirred out. Now I'm going to add 1 pouch of liquid pectin. And we're going to return this to a boil for 1 minute. Alright, so my jelly did not really pass my set test. So I went ahead and added another pack of Certo. Now this recipe that I was doing used dry pectin, and I used liquid. And I was hoping that it would just be a 1-to-1 conversion with the following the recipes in the liquid Certo pack, but I wasn't happy with that, so I did go ahead and add 2 packs of liquid Certo. Now let's get this in jars. Now whenever you're canning, hot liquid goes in hot jars. It's actually really tasty. Doesn't taste like corn. Now this last little bit's not going to go into the water bath canner. We'll just eat it. It does have kind of an apple-y flavor to it. Some people say honey. I think more apple-y. But it's good. And I made it out of something I was going to throw away. And I love that. Now we're going to get this water bath canner going, and it's going to process for 10 minutes. Now the last thing I need to do while the jelly is processing is bag up my frozen corn. Ooh. Almost wrote the wrong date. It's September now. So I froze my corn on trays. And it's frozen on parchment paper. So hopefully I can just drop it right in the bags. Now this one is sticking. So I started with 45 pounds of corn. I'm not sure how much that is in pecks or bushels or however they measure corn, but it was 45 pounds. I got 3 gallons of frozen corn, 7 pints of creamed corn, 6 half pints of corn cob jelly, plus all the corn I saved for fresh eating, which was about probably 16 ears. So that is a pretty exciting yield from our corn, and thank you so much to our friend for the wonderful corn that you blessed us with. Well friends, as always, I really appreciate you watching. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, hit that button. We'd love you to be a part of the Kowalski Mountain family. Thanks so much. We'll see you later.